Hey, it's Mel and today I'm doing a book talk for Miss Mayhem by Rachel Hawkins, the second book in the Rebel Belle trilogy. If you haven't heard anything about the first book, Rebel Belle, or read Rebel Belle, or done anything like that, you should probably go over to my Rebel Belle book talk that I have. I will put a link in the description because this book talk will be basically the first part, a non-spoilery but spoilery if you haven't read the first book. The second part is spoilery, so only the people who really don't care about spoilers or just have already read the book can watch. And basically a refresher for the first book is Harper Price is your typical Southern belle. She was the popular girl and now she's a paladin, which is basically a protector and a superhero-esque thing that has to protect this boy that she didn't really like in the first place but then has developed feelings for, and in the start of Miss Mayhem they are a couple. Now her and this boy that she's dating and her ex-boyfriend all have to bond together to figure out their own and each other's powers and to defeat the bad guys. And the reason they're bad guys is basically because David, her boyfriend, is the male oracle even though all of the oracles are supposed to be female, so he's kind of, people want to kill him because he's not right. And at the end of the first book, Harper's best friend is kidnapped, and in the second book they're trying to get her back and also dealing with all of each other's powers and making sure that this thing that happened in the end of the first book, which was the whole there was a spell cast and now he's really powerful and he can like not be himself and is more oracle than David, is kind of a theme that they work with as well. They also don't have any guidance anymore because the person that was guiding them and telling them all of these things that they needed to know died in the first book. I love the first book so much because it was the perfect mix of supernatural and teen angst and just all of the things that are so good, and the second one was no different. I think that Harper is a very flawed character and you don't really see that in many of the things because you're like, oh, this is the protagonist, they have to be perfect and they have to do all of the things that protagonists are supposed to do, when in actual fact this is more realistic. Even though it is supernatural themed, you can really convince yourself that they're real people even though all of the supernatural stuff is happening, because all of them were real people before they were thrust into this world and had to deal with all of this weird stuff that's happening. A disappointing thing with the transition between the first book and the second one is at the end of the first one all of the other girls at this event that they were at got powers, and I thought that it was going to be really cool because she was gonna have to teach all of these other girls how to be paladins as well, and it would be really cool because then there wouldn't just be one paladin who had to be really conscious, and when they died, if there was no one to pass it on to, then there would just be no paladins ever. And I thought that solved a lot of problems, but then they would just like, oh yeah, that didn't really happen because they used magic to make it unhappen. And I thought it was the perfect setup for something else, but that really didn't happen. It was kind of disappointing. And I do think Miss Mayhem isn't as good as Rebel Belle, but they're both so good that it shouldn't really matter, and that's kind of expected for second books in the series because second books are never really good, especially if the first one is really good. And I felt like I was rooting for the romance between the paladin and the oracle a little bit less than I did in the first one. I really enjoyed the romance in the first one and I don't really do that, and then in the second one I was like, it's not the greatest. So those are all of the non-spoilery things that I can tell you if you have read the first one but not the second one. Now onto the discussion with spoilers for all of the people that have read Miss Mayhem. Going back to the start of the book, what Harper and Ryan did to David with trying to control his powers wasn't morally like good, especially seeing as they didn't even talk to him about it. They really should have had a discussion about his powers. I could just feel throughout the whole book that that was gonna come back to bite Harper and Ryan because they really shouldn't have done that and it wasn't okay, and then David reacted angrily towards it and that wasn't really something that they should have not expected from doing that. I found the magic and fantasy elements of Miss Mayhem way more confusing than in Rebel Belle because it was just kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Like, the house was and wasn't there, and the bomb was weak and powerful at the same time. The whole test element never really happened, and that was really confusing because I thought it was going to be like this cool thing that happened in Sabrina the Teenage Witch where Harvey and Josh had to like fight for Sabrina's honor and go through these tests and stuff, and it really wasn't. And the runes stopped the link without death, and that just didn't make much sense, really. I mean, the book was good, but it was kind of confusing, and I don't really like confusing books. And I found a lot of the characters, like Mary Beth, just so unbelievably annoying to deal with. And the bit with Bea and Ryan, I realised that they were a thing right before Harper did, and I felt so sorry for Harper. I do think at the end it just was like the thing that Harper should have been hoping for, because Bea, Ryan and Harper aren't magic anymore, which sorts out a lot of problems. Everyone's families are fine, and there aren't any evil guys anymore because the only one died, and that just sorts all of the problems that she had. Because if David had remained there, then she would have had this ex-boyfriend and another ex-boyfriend that she was permanently linked to, and she couldn't go to university and she couldn't live her life. But like, it's the perfect solution, and there's going to be another book and she was complaining about everything, and it just worked perfectly. She can go back to her life now and nothing really bad could happen in it. And I don't get why she's all like, oh, this is the worst thing to ever happen to me. And I really didn't understand the intentions of the evil guy. Were you trying to kill him? Were you trying to make him more powerful? Were you trying to kill her? Just didn't make any sense. And why was the girl kidnapped in the first place? Those are basically all of the issues that I had with the book, but I did really like it, and I just don't think the romance was as good. I am still super excited for the third one, which, if you don't know, is called Lady Renegade and is purple and is beautiful. I got less of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibe, kind of, which I really enjoyed in the first one. It was really well written, and I just like to hear someone else's thoughts on the matter because I really enjoyed it, but clearly I have a lot of problems with it. But that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!